Okay, so here I am with my brother Rob. We're just going to be chatting, obviously, with the up-and-coming Lions tour to Australia, starting in only a couple of weeks' time. I think it would be a good opportunity to speak to Rob from his, talk about his Lions experiences, and in particular the famous 1989 tour to Australia when they won the Test series. So Rob, thanks very much for doing this. So just quickly, being that the Lions tour is just starting now in a couple of weeks, so you get heading off to Hong Kong. Everyone's talking about this huge buzz about the Lions. What makes the Lions so special?
It's everyone's childhood dream, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, when you start playing rugby, you want to play for your local club, and as you get older, obviously there are opportunities to play district for Wales. And the ultimate aim, I suppose, initially is to play for your country at senior level. But once you're there, I suppose we're fortunate in the UK that we can go a step further. You know, every 4 years there's a Lions tour down under, and you know, I had the opportunity in '89 that, you know, if I performed, if I was amongst the best in the UK, I could get that opportunity. So. It's you know, it is something special. It's probably the ultimate accolade in terms of rugby, certainly in the UK. And '89 was, you know, an important year, and thankfully I was given the opportunity. You know, I had the call to say that I was one of 30 players selected to go down under, and it was the most incredible feeling, you know, you can ever experience. It's unique. It's different to anything else. As much because you are, you know, you were seen as perhaps, you know, the best in Britain. It's also, I suppose, the fact that you are going to play a Test series and matches with the best players in you know, that you've played against in the Five Nations in my time. So it was an incredible experience. You know, once you get that call, it's like a lifelong ambition being fulfilled, and you know, I had that opportunity, and you know, we met up in. It was different in those days to the professional days. We had 2 weekends before we left for Australia at the Oaklands Hotel in Surrey, in Weybridge in Surrey. We got there. We had a great coach, Ian McGeechan. It was his first coaching role with the Lions, and he's gone on obviously to do a lot more. We had Clive Rowlands as team manager, a man who's done it all in the game and is a very passionate man and speaks and everything is done from the heart. And we had Finlay Calder, who was a great Scottish captain and a great inspirational back row forward, so which we had a great team around us. And I remember going to for the first time, driving up with some of the other players from Wales who'd been selected, and we got to this lovely hotel, and Ian McGeechan, the first thing he did was put us in a room and just tell us you know, the importance of the Lions and the history and the traditions that go around it. And it's then you start to understand how big this is, you know, how important it is. We were handed out kit, and again that's a special moment, because, you know, we're having that emblem as yours is special, the blazer, the tracksuits, you know, the training kit, and then you share with someone from another country. I shared with Scott Hastings from Scotland on the first weekend, and Mike Teague on the second weekend, and you know, again you get to know people fairly quickly when you sort of spend time with them, and you know, you're virtually living with them. But I remember what we said when we get there, you know, it was incredible. Clive painted a picture of what this tour was all about and how important it was, and the challenge that lay ahead. Geech did it exactly the same, and Finlay Calder in his own way did it. You know, he was a very well spoken man, very passionate man, and you know, it was incredible really to sit there and listen to 3 guys who had been put into a position of making this trip work and making this trip successful, and perhaps unlike what we have today, we were giving up kit, we had this spiel, and then it was a case of, let's get to the bar, let's have a good drink, because when you have a drink, I think you do tend to bond that much more quickly, and we did that, and we had a good drink that night, and again, it's, you get up in the morning, and Brian Moore, Jerry Guscott, Scott Hastings, these guys who we played against and we'd spoken to, were now sort of almost friends of yours in 24 hours. And you get up in the morning, you put your Lions kit on ready for training, you go down for breakfast, and I said, you know, what I'd sensed virtually straight away is that I was now part of a team who knew each other and knew what we had to do, you know, and the goal was obviously to win a test series down under. So those 2 weekends were special. We did all the fitness training, we did all our skills work, what Ian McGeechan felt we needed to go out and win a test series in terms of the game plan, and then obviously we headed down under.
You saying you mentioned about the 4 home unions coming together, and in fact obviously Justin Travanos Boy was only mentioning in the week how it felt like it was the first day in school. That's what he was saying. He was coming, and he's quite an unassuming guy, he's quiet anyway, and I suppose that's probably a challenge to the player, but obviously it's a challenge to the management as well, to get the quieter guys out of their shells and start mixing a bit. And you mentioned about having a few beers, going to the bar. In fact, Adam Jones mentioned that in the week as well. That's probably the best way. And I think it's going back to the whole traditions as well. They don't change over the years, Robert. Obviously it becomes more professional and people prepare better, teams prepare better, but old values still stand strong in it, and I think that's important.
And I think that's the good thing with the Lions. As I said, you know, it's those old values are still there. I think a lot of people look at professional sport and think, right, you know, you train all day, every day. That's your job. That's what you get paid for. There's no downtime. There's no social time. You shouldn't be drinking, things like that. That's nonsense in some ways. There's always the compromise, you know, and ultimately when you're only, you know, sort of, we were 9 weeks in Australia, when you've only got a short space of time to sort of mould a team together, you have to go back to old traditions to make that happen. I think the important thing as well is you get the right group of people together, and it's understanding the right group in terms of the management, in terms of the captain, in terms of the playing resource. So you know, there's always a balance. Someone might not quite be as good as another player from another country, but he has qualities that would work when you're together for 7 weeks. You know, he in terms of his ability to relate to other people, to fit into a plan that the coach wants. So you know that balance is there, and you know, I think Warren Gatland would have taken all those into consideration when he was selecting his squad for this tour.
Yeah, you said about Finley Calden and Ian McGeechan how key they were, and it's probably been replicated again now that a Scottish captain, Scottish coach, and it tends to follow through over the years that wherever the coach is coming from, and they pick the captain from the same country, and that's happened again. So it's important because they're only together for such a short period of time. The familiarity thing is important as well, and going in there with knowing what you know. And then because you haven't that time, isn't it? You only have 5 or 6 weeks, so I think there are kind of, you can see things there that are very similar to the 1989 Lions, John. You've seen that happening throughout the years. Well, going on to the next question, I suppose, Rob, they go to Australia and in May, similar, well, exactly the same as you were in 1989. What do you think it takes to win a test series? Because ultimately that's what they need to do, is to win a test series. And
well, that's it. I mean, they can go out there and lose 6 games, or 7 games. But if they win those 2 important test matches, they've won a test series, and ultimately history will only look back at was it successful. And if it's successful, that means you won a test series. Obviously they go out and try and win every game. You know, that will be probably their aim. But within that, there's the test series as the pinnacle of it. You've got to have the right group of people, and I think that you've got to bond closely. You've got to have everyone working towards the one aim. There can't be anyone sort of pulling or taking themselves away from that. they all have to buy into whatever the coaching staff, the management want from this group of people. And I said, you know, that's key when you select a group that you feel that they fit into to what you want. So that's going to be key. I think you go anywhere in the Southern Hemisphere, that you're going to have to deal with a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And that pressure isn't just when you're on the field for 80 minutes. It's everything else. You know, it's a big country. There'll be a lot of scrutiny as to what happens. There has to be a huge amount of discipline in what they do, both on and off the field. I think the biggest thing about Australia are a nation of winners. You know, they desperately want to win everything in any sport, in anything in life. And what we had to overcome, perhaps even back in '89, was the Australian press. You know, they play a massive part in trying to deflate, you know, maybe what's going right for a touring team.
Yeah.
You know, we actually played. We won all our games leading up to the first test. Back in those days, we played against. Queensland and New South Wales country New South Wales were the two biggest teams, and the bulk of the Australian team came from those two provincial sides. And we played against them, we beat them, and we played against all their best players, all their international players. So in terms of our build-up to that first test, you couldn't have wished for anything better.
Perfect, yeah.
It was perfect. We sort of built up nicely as well. You know, we got better and better as the games went on. So going into that first test, we were flying. We were confident. We genuinely believed that we could win that first test, and we could win the test series quite comfortably. But you know, we could sense even then that the press were putting pressure on us. They were trying, not just in terms of the way we were playing the game and our results and what have you. It was more a case of they were trying to do anything to derail us really from winning. You know, they were looking at everything, individuals. They were trying to find out things that didn't necessarily you know, sort of weren't rugby related. You can imagine that's a long time ago. Now, you know, social media, that the discipline levels have to be 100% strong.
Do you think being a Warren Gatlin is from the Southern Hemisphere, he's a Kiwi, he knows exactly what type of game they play? Do you think that's going to be a huge advantage to the Lions? It
will be an advantage. You know, at the same time, his success with Wales and with Ireland against Australia hasn't been great, but that doesn't mean to say that he doesn't know what Australian rugby is all about. You know, and this is the Lions. It's not Wales. It's not Ireland. This is, you know, a collective group all from 4 countries. So it's a different scenario. But he will be aware, and you know, the players will be aware. There's no doubt about it. The 2001 Lions again. You know, they lost the Lions won the first test, and then there was a massive change. You know, it felt like a home game for the Lions, that first game, and then it changed. It changed because Australia, the Australian Rugby Union, the Australian press made sure that the next game was all about Australia in terms of support, in terms of the colour in the ground, in terms of the build-up, and that made a difference. You know, and Warren Gatlin will expect the same.
I think you say that going into the first test, I know how crucial the first test is, but it goes to show history doesn't repeat itself, because in '89 you lost the first test and then came back and won the series, and then in 2001 the Lions won the first test and then they lost the series to 1. So yeah, I think it's going to boil down, as always in a 3-test series, as the second test is probably going to be key. But going on, you touched on it, Rob, about you leading up to the first test, you won every game, you played against all the best Australia had to offer in with the state sides. But then the first test, they went awfully wrong. Can you explain what went wrong on the day and about some?
Well, I say we had a great management, we had a great group of players. You know, we had a lot of leaders in our team. People who either had captained their country or went on to captain their country. Gavin Hastings, Ian Evans, Rob Andrew, Dean Richards, you know, obviously Finlay Calder as captain, we had Brian Moore, we had David Soul, we had a real strong group of quality leaders within the team, and a great management team. But you talk maybe about complacency or overconfidence, and having done what we had done and beaten all their provincial sides and played well against all their leading players, we there's no doubt about it, we probably went into that game believing that we were better than we actually were, and that Australia perhaps were poorer than they actually proved to be. Because, you know, we went out, and I think when they put the green and gold jersey on, when they come together as a country, you know, they did a different outfit, and we hadn't really taken that into account. We were blown away. We were beaten heavily. We were beaten 32 points to 12, I think, in our first test in Sydney. And we were lucky to get 12, I suppose. You know, they were a much better side, and you know, we didn't really know what hit us. You know, we were on the field. We played the way we had played. We went out there trying to do the same, and it just didn't happen. They were sharper. They were more physical than we expected. They took us on up front and did a job. And you know, perhaps, you know, you can talk about maybe selection wasn't right, but you know, the team that was picked in that first test, there weren't many people who could argue against the individuals selected, because they proved themselves out there. They proved themselves there, you know, in the Five Nations beforehand, and it was a good, strong side. So, I you know, if I was going to say one thing that probably made us lose that test, it was overconfidence.
You say when they put the green and gold on, I remember England, Australia in the 2003 World Cup, leading up to, well, right through the tournament, they were dreadful, but they have this knack of being able to win games, and they've got that mentality of being winners. They're used to winning, and I think it's very similar leading up to this test series. Are any people giving them a chance? There's a lot of discontent in the squad. Robbie Deans is under a bit of pressure, so I think the Lions have to be wary because they're Australia and they're used to winning. But you see, you lost that the first test, Rob, and then I suppose that brought you back down to earth in a huge way, and after being so confident after winning in games. So how did you manage to turn it around? What went on in that second, well, the build-up to the second test? Can you just...
Well, I mean, it started from the time we walked into the changing room after the first test. You know, the huge disappointment from everyone. History history was, as you said earlier, was basically lose the first test, no Lions team had bounced back to win a series. You know, so that was perhaps playing in your mind as well. Plus the disappointment of your own performance, the team performance, and just perhaps you know, surprised as to how good the Australian side were. So you know, that disappointment in the changing room can work positively in terms of you don't want to feel like this again. You know, so it started straight away, and again, Ian McGeechan, probably his major strength. He was a great rugby thinker, a great depth of knowledge about the game. But probably his biggest strength, you know, because he's a quietly spoken guy, was his ability to manage individuals. His man management skills were fantastic, you know, and you know, he sort of spent time going around each player. You know, Finlay Calder had his word, and he said we don't want to feel like this again. The good thing about the Lions tour and losing the first test is we're still in it. You know, we still got that chance to win the series. And Ian McGeechan came up to me. I was you know, there were some key players in the Australian side. Behind the scrum, they had three of the best players probably ever to play the game. David Campese, Michael Liner, and their captain, my opposite number, Nick Farr-Jones, who was an inspirational leader and a great rugby player. And I remember Ian McGeechan coming up to me and virtually putting his arm around me, and you know, we were almost in tears because of what had happened. And he was like saying, look, you know, we've got a chance, we've still got a chance. And he did say, he said, you were up against a fantastic player today, great leader, an inspiration to Australia, and no doubt probably the biggest influence on the way they played. and you know, when he was talking about all his strengths, but then he spoke about the fact that without him, or without him playing the way that he did today, they'd be a different side. And if we can knock him off his game and don't allow him to play his game, we had every chance of winning the next game. So he sort of pinpointed an individual who was key to the way they performed. And you know, and that was it. You know, we spoke about it. I didn't think much about it at the time, but it was there. It was in my mind, and you know, we had a couple of beers that night, and you know, we sort of drown our sorrows, knowing that we've got a week of hard work ahead of us to make sure that we bounce back. And you know, it was to bounce back from a 32-point defeat.
It's tough.
It's tough. You know, and you know, Clive speaks proudly about the heart and the effect the heart can have on, you know, when you go into anything with your heart behind it, you've got a chance. You know, whatever you want to do in life. You know, if you're passionate, if you have the ambition and the desire, you can do it. You know, and you know that was spoken a lot about as well in sort of the 24 hours after that game. So the build up and the week leading up to our second test was crucial. We had a midweek game as well. We played against ACT, or the Brumbies as they are now, Australian Capital Territories. And you know, so we had to travel to Canberra, we had to play that game. We had a probably, you know, there was going to be some changes, no doubt. And you know, I think that midweek game probably was shown to us who was going to probably play in that next test. But the good thing about this Lions tour, and again I talk about the group of people working together. We had Donald Lenihan, who was basically became captain of the midweek side. Wasn't perhaps going to play in the test matches, but was, you know, a great leader, captain Ireland, great man, and he sort of pulled that midweek team together, and they were working for us to help us win the test series, and we beat the ACT. It was Donald's Donuts, they were known, and I tell you, just the camaraderie between each player, of the 30 players who were out there, the support of the guys who probably would have played the test match on the following weekend for that team in midweek, and vice versa, was unbelievable. Honestly, it's, you know, I've been on other tours now and I've never experienced tightness, the closeness, the bond between everyone, and that helped. You know, knowing that these guys were behind us was important. And I said the build-up was constant. It was Ian McGeechan, probably every 2 minutes, every time he saw me, he'd have 2 minutes with me, and he'd talk about Nick Farr-Jones. So he was constantly not just putting a seed in my mind about, you know, I've got to try and knock him off again. He's reinforcing it, and you know, ensuring that I had a part to play in possibly winning the next test. So yeah, it was a fantastic build-up, Rod, and you know, we had a job to do. We won the midweek game, as I said, in Canberra. We then flew to Brisbane, where the game was, Ballymore, and a team was selected. There were changes. We probably had, you know, they made some crucial changes up front. They brought a lot of the English players, you know, who'd always been dominant up front in the Five Nations. So we had 5 England players in the pack, and then 2 Scottish and a Welsh, Finlay, David Soul and Diane.